All right, fantastic. Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and all who have joined us tonight for our foster care information session. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. This is the second of our series of 4 of these sessions. Last week we spoke about volunteering with GAP. As we said, tonight it's all about fostering. Just a couple of things. If you could remain on mute throughout the presentation so we don't get overlapping audio and that sort of thing happening. I should say, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Phil Weir, and it is a pleasure to welcome you. Continuing, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the chat facility at the bottom of your screen. Leave those there, and Philippa will be coming back to those towards the end of the presentation, and we will endeavour to answer those questions for you as they come up. Don't worry about anything that you think it doesn't need to sound silly. There are no silly questions. Please pop them in there, and we look forward to addressing them after we hear from Rose. A reminder that this presentation is being recorded and will be emailed out in the next few days. So there is a record of what's going on, and you can review and come back to what's discussed tonight. Now, tonight we're talking about fostering. It's just one of the most amazing experiences. I've been involved in 6 fosters now, and it's rewarding not only for the greyhound but also for you. For me, it was a wonderful experience. And we have one of the guiding lights of GAP and an absolute expert in foster care to present this information to you. Please welcome Rose Streetfield.
Appreciate the intro. I'm going to say right off the top, I've had some headphone issues coming into this, so just got the team to let me know when I go mute, and then I've got it back up. So hopefully we'll be able to get through the session. As Phil said, my name is Rose. I'm the GAP Volunteer and Foster Care Coordinator up at GAP. I've been working for Greyhound Racing Victoria now for coming up to about 9 years. Started in the marketing department in the event side, and then about 5 years later moved into the animal welfare side into this role, and has been managing the volunteers ever since. So you, if you do decide after this presentation to get involved, I'll be your main contact throughout that period. Yeah, we'll get to know each other, and I'll be helping you through. So hopefully, you might not be able to, sounds like you might not be able to hear me very well.
It sounds a little like cloudy or like choppy or something, that's all.
Okay, let me just hang on. I'll just try one thing. No. Doesn't sound any better. I'll keep going.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right. So sorry about that. So in terms of what we're going to go through tonight, so I'll just give you a general idea about what fostering is. Fostering is one of the 3 volunteer roles that we have up at GAP. We just decided to pull this one out as a separate information session because it's a little bit more involved in terms of lots of information to hand over about the volunteer role, but it is one of the 3 volunteer roles that we have up at GAP. So yeah, as again Phil said earlier, please do pop your questions in the chat group. We definitely want to hear from you, and I'll try and answer as best I can. All right, let's start with a bit of a video. This is just a nice intro to foster care. This is Peggy Lou, one of our long-term foster carers, and if you join the team, you'll definitely get to know Peggy Lou. She loves fostering, loves attending any training or social events that we have. So this is just a nice intro.
Many years ago, my first bull terrier got quite sick and we needed quite a bit of blood, and I asked by chance where it came from, and greyhounds are universal donors. So I promised, vowed and declared one day that I'd help them and pay them back, and all those years later I heard the little "you promised" fire off, and so here I am. Fostering greyhounds is a bit addictive. It's very much a roller coaster ride, and that's always fun. You just don't know what's going to come in the door next. I like to juggle the greyhounds with my lifestyle. I try and take them everywhere I go, give them new experiences every day, and on the weekends especially socialising out to the cafes and restaurants and dog walks and all sorts of things. I've got Miss Lily with me at the moment, and she's a beautiful little girl, 3-year-old Brindle, and she's a little bit of a princess sometimes. Within 5 minutes of arriving here, she discovered my bed, her bed, the lounge, all the things she's not meant to discover. I think that I always get more things out of the greyhounds than they ever get out of me. They just bring so much joy and happiness and entertainment to your life. They're probably one of the most loyal breeds you'll ever come across, and they're a beautiful, beautiful animal.
Body fostering, you're actually taking greyhounds home into the home for a temporary period of time, and we go through various stages of the greyhounds, and in terms of what you're aiming to do is to help the greyhound adjust from pet life to kennel life to pet life. So there's lots of things that happen during that time. Generally, it's there's lots of progress that they do make through that throughout the foster time. Things like the supplements with dogs what pet animals at home.
I think sorry, Rose, I think we're having audio problems again. Sorry, it's like coming through very softly.
Hopefully this is better. Is this any better?
Yeah, it is.
That's magic.
Okay. All right. So so basically, we're helping do the greyhounds learn about pet life. So there's lots of different things that they'll learn during that time. We've got introductions to your pet animals at home, dog socialization out on the street. So that's a pretty big one for them, just to learn how to appropriately socialize with dogs. They'll be learning about inside a house and how to be a good dog inside, so all about manners, learning to walk on lead, go up and down stairs, learn about loud noises, all those sorts of things. So these guys aren't pet dogs. They are used to kennel life, so they've got quite a good routine that they're used to, and then all of a sudden they come into pet life and it's different to what they're used to. So we just help them adjust to that. So there's lots of fun during that time as well, watching them learn and explore and see things for the first time. In terms of how long is the foster for, so generally it's 3 weeks. So that's what we aim for. Sometimes it can be longer, sometimes it can be shorter. It just really depends on how the dog goes in the home. Sometimes it can be shorter if they're just not, they might not be coping for whatever reason. Generally, they might not be coping well on their own. So as foster carers, it's a really big part for us to help them build confidence and learn how to live by themselves. And then sometimes it can be a bit longer if you just, you are trying to teach them something and you're just need a little bit of extra time. So it's not really about obedience training. We're not worried about if the greyhound can sit, drop, roll, all that sort of stuff. It's more based on pet life and, relaxing in the home, chilling out on their bed, not pulling someone's arm out on the walk, and just learning how to not grab things off the bench, etc. The one thing to be mindful of is if you do have like a beach house or a holiday house that you go to, or you're going away on holidays, that period is not the time to take a foster dog. So the 3 weeks does need to be at your home that you live in. and that's where we're expecting that dog to be for that 3 weeks. So if you do plan to commute down for summer or something to a holiday house or go away on holidays, and just wait until you get a 3-week gap where you will be at home. So what do you need to foster? So not a great deal of things really. So in terms of what you get, so you'll get a muzzle. So all of our greyhounds that go out into foster will need to wear a muzzle when they go for a walk. And that's, I know if you do currently own a greyhound, I should say, you won't be used to that. But for us, in terms of our foster dogs, they're pets in training. So they do go with a muzzle and they need to go for a walk with a muzzle on. And they're really handy if you've got pet dogs at home to do the socialization. So we do use that muzzle for settling in as well when there's a multi-dog household involved. You'll get obviously the dog will come with a collar, lead. You actually get a bag of food as well, which will last the whole foster period. The dogs are fed dry food. It's exactly the same diet that we feed them in the kennels as well. And you also do get a jacket through the cooler months. In terms of what you will need, so you need a bed. Generally, an inside and outside bed is, I think, what a lot of carers will have. The thing to be mindful of with foster dogs is not to go out and spend lots of money. That's not the aim for this. You have pets in training in your house, so things will go wrong along the way. There's highs and lows, there's lots of fun, but they will test your patience at times. And so you don't want to be spending lots on big fluffy beds, because potentially you may get a foster along the way that might have fun playing with that bed, and there may not be much left of it when you come home. So there's some raised beds that if anyone has been to our kennels in Seymour, you would have seen. So the raised beds are off the ground, and they've got like a canvasy sort of bed cover that you can just buy for $10–15 at your local pet store if it gets worn out or chewed. Places like the Salvos also have some old dog blankets and doonas. Again, great options for cheap bedding. And then if they destroy them, it's not a huge cost gone down the drain. Also just need water and food bowls. Again, don't need to spend a lot. It can just be old bowls that you have at home in the cupboard, or you can go out and buy some actual dog bowls too. That's not a problem. And toys and treats are also a bonus. In terms of treats, it's not treating the dog just for the sake of treating the dog, because they're looking at you cute. It's more we're using the treats for training purposes. So if they've they've gone past a dog barking at them with not much response, we reward them for that. If they've not been scared of a loud noise that's all of a sudden happened, we're rewarding them for that. So and just different things along the way. If they've been a good dog, we want to let them know that they've been awesome. So food rewards are great. I mean, you can certainly use verbal or giving them a pat as well. But if the dog is going to take treats, then it always sweetens the deal if you can. In terms of picking up and dropping off a foster, so we do have Melbourne locations for this, and we have our Seymour location as well. So as you hopefully can see on your screen, we've got Sandown Greyhound Racing Club. Sorry, in that bracket that should say Springvale. I always do that. And so they're on Saturdays and Wednesdays from roughly 11 a.m. And then we've got our Tullamarine location. So for those that may have seen on our social media website, we have a Tullamarine location that started up this year. So we've got the kennels down there. We have specific times on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 1 o'clock, but otherwise outside of that, we also can do Monday, Tuesday and Friday by appointment. And then we've got our Gap Seymour, again, by appointment Monday to Saturday. So quite a few different options there. It's certainly something that you don't need to remember now. It's something that you'll get used to as the time goes on, and we'll discuss when you are ready to pick up a foster. We'll go through the options. So there, as I mentioned before, there are some problems that pop up along the way. You do have the little cheeky teenagers in your house that do like to do cheeky things. So in terms of where do you seek help, myself is one of those places that you can go to. So I'm available throughout the foster period to contact. We also have our private Facebook group, which is just for our foster carers and GAP staff. We have many foster carers in that group, and we have carers that have had 100, 200 foster dogs. So pretty much if you've got an issue, there's probably someone in that group that has had it before, and they're such a great group and really helpful, and are keen to help and you know, look out for the other foster carers there. So certainly a great place to go to. And then, yeah, we just try and troubleshoot what we can. So in terms of the information that we give prior to you taking your first foster dog home, we'll go through some basic things that you most likely will pop up, but every dog's going to be different. So we do check-ins a couple of days after you pick up a dog, and we'll go through some, you know, some basic things that may have popped up and talk through how to troubleshoot them and work on them. And then, you know, any time throughout that period, if you do need any help, you just give us a buzz and we can go from there. And, you know, if things are really not working out for whatever reason, we can get the foster back early. So you're not stuck with the foster the whole 3 weeks if it doesn't seem to be working out. In terms of medical issues, so we do cover the reasonable medical expenses if they do pop up. And I mean, they're animals, and greyhounds have really thin skin, so cuts and that are quite frequent and certainly happen throughout foster. So, you know, that's when you get in contact with me, and we again try and troubleshoot it and work through it at home. There's lots of things we can do at home to help a dog through different issues. But sometimes we do need to go to the vet. So we try and organise that at either Port Phillip Animal Hospital or our GAP Seymour location. We understand that that's not going to be appropriate for everyone. However, if it's not an emergency, then we will often try and get the dog back and then to one of those locations. If the dog does need to go to the vet straight away, then we'll get approval and we go to an external vet and manage it from there. So there's definitely help out there if something goes wrong. Some common questions I get. So can I foster if I'm work full time? Yes, you certainly can. We have many adopters that contact us and are looking for a dog and they work full time. Times are a little bit different at the moment, as everyone is well aware of. So, you know, your working style may have changed. You may work from home a bit, but there are still plenty of people that work off site all the time. So we really do need to help the dogs and show them that, you know, it's not that scary being alone, and a lot of them get used to it and do work through it. And that's really helpful for our adoption team, because when we do have an adopter call up and they would like to adopt a dog and they work full time, we know we can go to those foster dogs and go, okay, well, this one was great by itself, so we'll match that dog to the adopter. So yes, you definitely can. We actually pretty much all sort of home types we love to join our team, and we're looking for all sorts of different home types. Can you adopt your foster? Yes, certainly can. So that often happens, and yeah, that's not a problem. So generally they do just need to go through some behavioural tests before they can be officially adopted. But you just let me know if you're thinking about it, and I'll pop your name next to the dog and we can sort out the adoption down the track. In terms of, I should say, just in that previous question about home types, so if you've got kids, other dogs, that's fine. The only thing with other dogs is if you've got small dogs, unfortunately, we're not able to have those foster homes join. We just, with the foster dogs that we get allocated, none of them are really small dog safe. So medium to large dogs, not a problem, but not small dogs. And also cat homes. Unfortunately, we don't have many foster dogs that go into homes with cats. And apartments. We also don't really have any dogs that come into the foster list that we would be happy to send into apartments. We don't want your houses to be ruined. And outdoor space doesn't have to be huge. It can be just a courtyard, or it can be, you know, a paddock or a backyard. The main thing is secure fencing, so 1.5 meters or higher, and some shelter. So they need to be able to find shelter if it rains or if it's a hot weather. With the fencing, ideally solid fencing is the best. So greyhounds are sight animals. So if you've got a wire fencing, and you know you do have wildlife on the other side, that's going to be super interesting for greyhounds. So solid fencing is ideal. So I guess in terms of, you know, if you're interested, and we are coming to the end of the presentation, so if you do have any questions, please start popping them through, and I can get to them at the end of the presentation. But if you are interested in signing up, we do have an application process. So all you need to do is go to GAP's website. There's a volunteering tab. You hit the foster care part, and there's a link to complete an application. You then just attend an induction up at Seymour. That's the only time you need to come to Seymour. And then, as you saw earlier, our pickup and drop-off locations are Melbourne-based if you are Melbourne. And then once you've done the induction, you're ready to go, and you can start fostering whenever you'd like. And you don't have to foster a certain number of dogs per year. The main thing is if you can foster at least one foster dog a year, that's perfect. Any more is a real bonus. Hopefully you get addicted like Peggy Lou and a lot of us, and come back for plenty more. So if you're not comfortable sending through questions tonight, I'm certainly available to chat to as well. So I'll leave those details up on the screen while I go through and answer the questions. But we've got my mobile there as well as email. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the moment. So I think we've had a couple of questions come through, but please send through any more that pop up.
That's great, Rose. And I've noticed that Tristan has also been putting up some information on the screen, providing those links to some of the information you've been speaking to. I just my own personal reflections on fostering is it's rewarding, like teaching a young person to do new things. I know that greyhounds are notoriously ordinary or awkward with stairs. And I always found it a real triumph to be able to get a greyhound to not just sit there and say, nah, not going up there, to actually start to get their coordination and really work out these stairs. And by the end of the day, or as long as it takes, they're just experts at it. It's a really wonderful and very rewarding experience. Now, I know there have been a few questions crop up. Philippa, do we have a list of those questions for Rose?
Yeah, sure do. So one that's come through, they're asking, are there any scenarios where an apartment is an option, older doggos or anything like that?
Yeah, there are. The hard thing is that we don't have many that pop up that are going to be suitable. So generally I will be looking for dogs that are older, that, you know, they may have been into a home before, and so have a bit of experience. But the problem is they don't pop up very often. So what I've found in the past is that people will contact me, let me know that they're available to foster, and they may wait, you know, a few months before I can find a foster, which I don't think is fair. Whereas generally speaking, when people touch base with me and they would like a foster, I can organise one within 1 or 2 weeks. So yeah, there are dogs. I'm not saying that the greyhounds can't go into apartments. There are some that can. But in terms of the number of dogs that we would actually recommend to go into apartment is quite small. So therefore, it can mean that you don't get a foster for a very long time. So that's the main reason.
Rose, can I just butt in and just ask, when you say an older dog, what sort of age range would you be looking at? What would you describe as an older dog?
Yeah, so I'd probably, like, if we're talking about apartments, I'd probably be looking for at least 5 or 6 years old. but it also would go on the information that we've got from our behaviour teams. So we do have some 5 or 6 year olds that are quite bouncy, full on dogs that we probably still wouldn't pop into an apartment. So I take on their age, but also the notes from the behaviour team. If we've got a really active dog that needs a lot of stimulation, then they are going to struggle a lot more in an apartment. And unfortunately, there's no outside space. So what they're going to have available to them are all your prized possessions. So your couches, your TVs, your dining tables. So generally speaking, with the foster dogs, and when I go through the induction, I recommend for everyone to pop the dog outside for the first few days while they settle in, because they're used to being outside. Generally speaking, it's the first time they've ever been into a home environment before. So what they're experiencing inside can be a bit overwhelming. And if they're struggling with that transition, one, they can be quite vocal, and apartments are generally living quite close to each other. And yeah, also, as I said, what's your contents of what's in your house. Whereas out in the backyard, yes, they can be vocal, but you've probably got a bit more space between neighbours, and also what they're going to chew and dig is generally not as precious as what you find inside a house.
Excellent, excellent. And I know there are lots of questions now coming through, Philippa.
Yes, there are. I've got one come through from Anika. She's asked, we have an 18-month-old, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. Are they too young to be around a foster?
No. So we definitely have all ages of children out in foster homes. The important thing to remember is when children are involved, that they should always be supervised when they're in the same area as a foster dog. And it's really important that we're trying to teach, and I know it can be really difficult for the younger kids. So I guess that's where we really need to manage that situation and intervene and step in when things may be starting to get a bit too much. But it's really important to try and teach the kids to give the dogs lots of space, not get on their bed, not jump on their back, not go and hug them, because the greyhounds are getting used to sharing space. So they're very individual in terms of their environment that they've come from. In terms of kennels, it's generally one dog per kennel. They don't have to share their food bowl or their bed or their toys or their food. And then all of a sudden they come into pet life where there might be other dogs, or there's children and adults that all of a sudden they are encroaching in the personal space of a dog. So it takes time for them to get used to it. Some dogs are quite fine with it, but you should always, I guess, err on the side of caution to begin with, and just get to know the dog before you start to get really personal with them. So yeah, the kids, in terms of the ages, that's fine, as long as you're comfortable and you're able to manage having a 18-month-old or younger. That's the main thing. Just to make sure you're watching them. If they're crawling towards a dog, then you just stop them, move them away. And the hard thing can be the toy situation, because often with kids, toys are left all around the house. So they may go missing and they may find their way into a foster dog's mouth.
It's understandable, really.
Yeah.
Any more info on ideal backyard? Is it better to be on a quieter street, for example?
Quiet backyards, yeah, I guess if you could really narrow it down, that would be great. But honestly, it's okay. We, in terms of adopters, we don't know really, what their backyard situation is going to be like as well. So, if your backyard backs onto a train line, for example, and the train line's literally out the back door, then yeah, that potentially could be a bit too much for the greyhounds, because that's going to be super new. But if it's just a general road and it's a suburb, then that's totally fine. Generally, we will just see how they go, and you'll find out fairly quickly if it's too much. So sometimes it can be too much. The noises, especially if you're in a suburbs or the city, it can be a bit much. But generally, they cope okay. It's more when they go out for walks that you might find that they struggle a little bit. At home, they generally get used to things, because it's a little bit quieter at home versus, walking out on the streets. So it's things that we'll work through when you take a foster dog home. If you do have any of those things pop up, we can have a chat and see what we need to do.
Cool. How comfortable is a foster allowed to get? For example, are you allowed to cuddle on the couch, or should you ensure they learn to stay in their own bed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is really important to be mindful that they're not your dog. So we shouldn't be treating them like your pet dog, because we don't know what the adopters are going to want. Some people will be quite happy with a dog to sleep on the couch or sleep in the bedroom or sleep on the human bed. In terms of a foster dog, we do, these guys don't know what's right or wrong. So we're there to try and help them learn that. And ideally, we want them to sleep on their bed and outside of the human bedroom as well. So not getting on couches, not getting on beds, and not sleeping in the human bedroom either. Ideally, it's really great to build independence as well. So sleeping in the bedroom can sometimes, distract from helping a greyhound become independent and confident. So ideally, they'll be sleeping in a separate room. Generally, as I said before, first couple of days outside, and then you slowly introduce them inside. So you don't just bring them straight inside for 8 hours and think that things are going to be okay. It'll be short term. So, you might start 15 or 20 minutes at a time and then gradually get better. Then you might, start with the laundry for the first inside sleeping area, or a bathroom. Some people use kitchens depending on what their house is set up. And then once you are comfortable that the greyhound understands toileting and boundaries and not grabbing everything, then you might pop them into a more open space like the lounge room. So it's sort of a gradual process that we go through. And yeah, ideally we do have some boundaries set so they can learn what's right or wrong.
Cool. What sort of things need to be considered if you already have a greyhound in your home?
So in terms of a multi-dog household in general, management is key. So that's the main thing, that you remember and are mindful about resources. So that's what, often can go wrong, is when food or toys are left on the ground. So it's just making sure, especially at the beginning, while you're getting to know how each dog is coping with each other, you remove food bowls once they're finished, you feed them separately, you remove toys. And when you bring that stuff out, you're supervising. You're there to actively supervise what's going on. So if things start to go wrong, you can often intervene before it's too late. And it's still important to have some one-on-one time with your pet dog as well when you have a foster dog. So often, a lot of the attention is on the foster dog when you have them in your home, because there's lots of teaching and that going on. But it is definitely important to still have that one-on-one time with your pet dog as well, so they still are part of the family and enjoying the experience. And that's another key thing too, that some dogs do actually like being only dogs. So if you find that your pet dog becomes a bit unsettled, they might go off their food, they're a bit grumpy with the foster dog, then that's probably telling you that they may not be comfortable having another dog in the home. We usually try and give them a few days to work through, because they're not going to be best friends. That's just not, not what happens. It's like humans. We are not best friends as soon as we meet. We may be down the track, and it's the same with the dogs. So they need time to settle in, to get to know each other, to work out, who's who in the zoo. And then if we still get through that settling in period and they're not quite happy with each other, then that's when we might, remove the foster dog. And then you just have to think about whether that's going to be the right fit for your pet dog as well. So I think that's sort of the main thing. It's more management and setting up the house so you can separate them if needed, and usually that's a really good option to begin with as well. So baby gates are a really useful tool if anyone has them, or if anyone's able to borrow or get some. It can be a great way to make the house smaller, but also separate if you need to as well, in terms of dogs.
Cool. Another question that's come through. I'm assuming fosters are not house trained. Does your induction provide advice, tips on how to manage this?
Yes, that's correct. So you should never really assume, even if you've got a dog that's been into a home before, or you know that a dog's had experience in a home. You should never really assume that they're going to be toilet trained, because it's a new environment. So there's new smells. So you should always look to do some basic toilet training when you're introducing a new dog into the home. Generally, the greyhounds are really quite easy to toilet train. It's just simple things, and it comes back to management. So actively supervising them when they come into the house. If they have a big nap and then they get up, take them outside. If they're constantly walking around sniffing, you can often tell when a dog is about to go to the toilet, so you can interrupt before they actually go through with it. Praising them for when they actually go in the right spot outside. They're all the basic things that you really should work on, and generally that works great with the greyhounds.
Cool. Maggie's asked, where did they live during their working/racing years?
So where did they live?
Yeah.
We generally in kennels. I mean, we don't really have too much information about what they've got up to before they've come into the kennels with us. But generally, they've spent a lot of their time in kennels. Some racing owners may have brought them into the house or put them in the backyard, etc. But we're not going to know that. So we just start from the beginning. The main thing for me is for people to focus on what the dog's presenting in the home. So don't worry too much about what's happened before, because that's not really going to help if there's a behavioural issue that's popped up, because we're just going to go to assumptions, and we may actually go down the wrong path in terms of attending to the behavioural problem that's in front of us. So we look at what the dog's doing. What are the signs, what's the context, and then we work from that to help the dog along their path.
What is ideal RE familiarizing? So stairs, engaging with other dogs on a walk, walking on a lead, yes or more?
Yeah, so pretty much anything really is great for them to socialize with. We have a foster evaluation that you'll get before you pick up a dog, and that sort of guides you with some of the things that we're looking for. Dog socialization is definitely a big one. They haven't met many breeds of dogs besides greyhounds, so that's one of the big tasks for us, is to go walking and introduce them to other dogs and catch up with family and friends that have other dogs. And yeah, it's basically just anything in your home. All that stuff is going to be new. The things that they're interacting with out on the street, that's going to be new. But as I said, the foster evaluation does give you some guidance on what we're looking for and what sort of information we want to get from you. In the end, what you tell us helps us find the right home for the dog. So if you're finding that the dog's not coping by itself, then we're not going to be adopting it by itself. If it's a really boisterous dog with lots of energy, we may be looking for a backyard, a home with older kids, not the elderly, those sorts of things. So that's what the information you provide us will help us to find the right home for the dog. So we really want to try and get them in the right home first go.
Yeah. Anika has asked, we have a very secure backyard, but have neighbouring dogs either side that bark a lot. Could this pose an issue for a foster in the future?
Yes and no. So it could be a bit noisy to begin with. I know when I've had foster dogs, and we used to have a neighbour that had a couple of dogs, and they would always bark when we got a new foster dog. And so the first few days it was a bit barky at each other, but the greyhounds generally got an understanding of what was going on, and after a few days they didn't even worry about the dogs. It's probably something that we're not really going to know until a foster dog gets into your home. outside noises, in terms of, you know, people getting up in the morning, possums in the trees, neighbours' dogs, they're all things that, yeah, they may cause a bit of vocalization from your foster dog. But that's something that, you know, you can generally work through, and after a few days they generally get a lot better with it.
Yeah. Does your foster induction provide advice on how to manage a foster with your own dog?
Yeah, so we do touch on it. We talk about how to introduce a pet dog with a foster dog, and some tips on how to do that. So that's, I guess, the start part, and then, as I said before, it does become a lot of about the management that happens in the home. When we do the check-in, we can definitely go through what you're finding, what you're experiencing, and we can work through some options. And yeah, so we can't go through everything in the induction. There's quite a lot of information that's already provided in that induction. So we'll give you an outline of what our suggestions would be to manage it and to introduce. And then once the foster dog gets into the home, if you go through those steps and you've got things that pop up, then that's when you touch base with us to discuss a bit further, and we can work on what you've got in your home.
Yeah, this next one is 2 questions in one.
Yep.
So they've said, you've said no cats. We have a greyhound and a cat that get along and we're wanting to foster. Is that possible? And do you find that foster greyhounds copy the behaviour of other greyhounds they foster with?
So I'll go to the second question first.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, pet dogs are great teachers. They end up doing a lot of the teaching because they speak the same language. So we use foster homes with other dogs for the dogs that we know are struggling by themselves. So they're a bit anxious, they're a bit stressy by themselves. And we pop them into foster homes with foster carers that have dogs, and generally the greyhounds as well, because they are really great teachers. They're calm, they're not worried about pet life. They've already got a hang of it. They understand what it's all about, and so the greyhounds will just naturally follow that. Also, if a dog's a bit, foster dog's a bit nervous around strangers and people and that sort of thing, they see the excitement of the pet dog when, you come home from work and you've got your pet dog wagging its tail, jumping up and down, excited to see you. You'll slowly see that foster dog picks up on it, the curiosity gets to them, and they will start to involve themselves in those sorts of activities. In terms of the cat question, it's similar to the apartments. So we do have dogs that do need to go into foster with cats, but again, it's minimal. So you can be waiting a very long time for a foster dog. So that, yes, I'm not saying again that we don't have dogs that need to go into homes with cats, but it's very far between having that availability.
Yeah. Can a particular sex be requested? My dog seems to get along better with female dogs.
So it can. In terms of when I match a foster dog to a home, if you've got a female pet dog at home, then I'll match you a male foster dog. If you've got a male dog at home, generally could go either way, male or female. In terms of the female dogs, it doesn't mean that they can't work as a pair. It's just generally if 2 females don't get along, they really don't get along. So just because we don't know a heap about our foster dogs, we are on the side of caution and pop female foster dogs in with male foster dogs. However, if you've got a male pet dog and you find that they don't get along too well with males, and you can just let me know, because there's no point sending you a male dog if you already know that your pet dog doesn't get along with them. So yeah, we can definitely send you a female dog instead.
Yep. Bree has just asked, I currently have a greyhound who is super friendly but has never lived with another dog. As a full-time worker, would it be best for them to be separated while I'm out?
Yeah, so our recommendation to begin with is when they're settling in is if you can't actively supervise, then separate. If you can't separate, then we really recommend to leave the muzzle on that you've got that we give you as part of the foster pack. And then it's really, again, if you come home from work to do some socialization, 10 or 15 minutes in the backyard where the dogs can hang out together. You do that, you try and do that a couple of times a day over a few days, and then they'll start to get to know each other, listen to each other. And that's the other thing, you've got to remember the foster greyhound social skills are not quite up to the same level as a pet dog just yet. That's, again, another thing that we're trying to do. So they may be a bit rude in socializing, and they may not listen, or they may be a bit nervous about a dog coming up into their personal space all the time. So they may be a bit growly because they just want the pet dog to back off. So so I guess basically if you can't supervise, then separate, and if you can't separate, then pop the muzzle on.
Awesome. One final question was just more information regarding the inductions. So I guess when they are, how often they happen, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we run the inductions up at Seymour generally once a month. So they run from about 9:30 to 1 o'clock. You can actually take a foster dog home after the induction as well. So, definitely make the most of the trip if you're ready and keen for a foster. So it's about once a month that we do them.
Awesome. I think that's it. I think I've gone through all the questions. So yeah, and Tristan's just put up a link to the GAP website for some of our frequently asked questions, which people could find quite beneficial.
Yeah, I guess just to go back to the multi-dog household, in saying that in terms of the separation or the muzzle, that's really something that you don't, don't rush. As I said before, they're not going to be best friends straight away, but some dogs will get together and be friends, I guess, a bit quicker than others. So, it's not, you don't need to separate them and muzzle them the whole foster period. It's just while they're settling in, getting to know each other. And as you also learn, so you may be really cautious to begin with, and that's not a problem, because we'd rather you err on the side of caution and look after both dogs. So, for example, you might have the muzzle on the foster dog when you leave for the first week or 2 weeks. But as you get more experience with the foster dogs, you'll learn about your dog even more, and you'll learn how to read the foster dogs more. So, that period where you have to separate or use muzzles will change and decrease, or, you'll adjust as you need to as well. So just to, explain that a little bit further, it doesn't mean you have to do that the whole foster. It's just especially initially while they're getting to know each other.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Rose.
And with the muzzles, they can definitely drink in them. It doesn't hurt them. So they're fine to have them on for long periods of time. Obviously they can't eat, but generally you're around when it's mealtime. So, or you should be definitely, especially if it's a multi-dog household. So they can drink in them, and they're totally fine in them. They just sometimes may not want them on, but it's definitely a safety precaution that's good to use.
One question has just come through. How much exercise will the greyhounds need, like walks time?
That's a good question too. So they're sprint animals, so they're like the Usain Bolts of the world. So it's not long periods of time at all. It's probably 20 to 30 minutes, or if you want to do 2 10 minutes or 2 15-minute walks a day. You will get fosters that will like walks and will go longer, but generally 20 to 30 minutes a day is fine. If you do have a foster that likes to go longer, you just need to be mindful that more exercise means more food. They need more food, otherwise they're going to decrease in weight. So we sort of estimate in terms of the food quantity that you need to feed them. About a 20 to 30-minute walk is perfect. And then we use lots of enrichment stuff at home to occupy them and mentally stimulate them as well.
Awesome. That's it. No more questions.
Awesome. That was good.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you, Philippa, and thank you, Tristan, who's working the technical stuff. I can also say that my boy, after 20 minutes of walking, is looking at me saying, yeah, I'm over this now. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, before we go, thank you all for being here tonight, and I hope you've achieved a lot and learned a lot from the information you've heard tonight. We have another session next Wednesday night, and it's all about adoption. That's the I suppose the big one, the end result of all of the things that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. I think there are a few places left. If you'd like to join us, please do. We would love to have you. And also a reminder of the National Adoption Day on the 30th of April on a Saturday. If you'd like to get involved or find out some more information, the GAP website has a lot more information about that and everything to do with the beautiful breed of the Royal Greyhound. We love them dearly, and we know you will too. Thank you all for coming tonight. We hope to see you again very, very soon.